The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built from materials that did not exist on most worlds. The walls shone like crystal, but they were harder than diamond and could think. They could listen. They could remember everything that happened inside them for millions of years. The ceiling stretched so high that it seemed to touch infinity itself, and light sources that did not produce heat floated in the air like stars that had been trapped inside a room. On this day, the council gathered for an ordinary meeting. What would happen in this meeting would change everything, though none of them knew it yet. The members of the council came from 7 different species, each one ancient, each one powerful beyond measure. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they could not even remember a time when they did not rule it. The Veils were the first to arrive. They did not have bodies like other creatures. They existed as pure thought, as minds that moved through the air like whispers. They did not need to sit or stand. They simply were, present in the room, watching, listening, always thinking. The Karathi came next, creatures made of silicon and stone, 10 feet tall, with skin that looked like metal but felt warm to the touch. Their voices sounded like grinding rocks, but they spoke with intelligence that had been tested by 5 million years of survival. The Lumini floated in last, beings of pure energy, their forms shifting between colors that human eyes could not even perceive. There were others, too. The Sira, who had evolved in oceans on worlds no longer in existence. The Nixians, who could see in perfect darkness because they lived in the space between stars. The Voth, who had learned to exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. And finally, the Keelan, old creatures who had grown wise and tired, who spoke rarely but always with purpose. The meeting was called to order by the Speaker of the Council, a Karathi named Vor-Esh, who had won his position through both strength and intelligence. He struck a gavel that made no sound but created ripples in the air itself, and every being in the hall fell silent. Vor-Esh spoke of many things. There were wars on the outer edges of the galaxy that needed watching. There were new planets being discovered, most of them empty or too hostile to use. There were trade agreements to be made and unmade. The business of running a galaxy was complicated and slow and important. Then the conversation turned to a small solar system on the edge of the known universe. It was hardly worth mentioning. The system had only a few planets, and most of them were not valuable. But one of them had life on it. That planet was called Earth. "Earth," said Vor-Esh, his voice carrying a tone of disappointment. "A backward world. Their civilization has only existed for a few thousand years. They still burn fossil fuels for energy. They still kill each other over land and ideology. They are barely more advanced than animals." One of the Lumini beings shifted colors rapidly, which was how they laughed. "We should not even be discussing this world," it said. "Why waste our time on such insignificant creatures?" Another council member, a Voth named Xith, who existed in multiple dimensions at once, spoke from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "The humans have only recently begun to understand space travel. Their first colony outside their home world was established just 100 years ago. They are children. We should pay them no attention." But then something surprising happened. A small figure stood up to speak. She was not part of the original council, but she was allowed to attend meetings on behalf of her species. Her name was Ji-Wan, and she was human. She had been sent to represent Earth's interests, though nobody believed Earth had any interests worth representing. Ji-Wan was 45 years old, which was old for her species. Her black hair had streaks of silver running through it. Her face was strong and serious. Her eyes were dark and intense. She wore a uniform that was meant to show respect to the council. But the uniform could not hide the fact that she was small compared to the other beings in the room. A Karathi could have picked her up and held her in the palm of one hand like a toy. She stood anyway. With respect, Jiwan said, her voice steady and clear. Earth should not be dismissed so quickly. Humanity is young, yes, but we are creative. We are adaptable. We survive in places where other species would die. We imagine things that have never been imagined before. We build things that others thought were impossible. We do not give up, even when giving up would be easier. The silence that followed was heavy. Voresh looked at Jiwan with something that might have been curiosity or might have been annoyance. It was hard to tell with a Karathi. Captain Jiwan, he said slowly, your species is barely 100 years into space exploration. We have been exploring space for 50 million years. Do you really expect us to believe that a few decades will change your position in the cosmos? Jiwan did not look away. I expect the Galactic Council to see potential where others see only weakness. I expect you to judge my species on what we might become, not just on what we are now. The Lumini being laughed again, colors flashing rapidly. What will humanity become? More efficient at destroying itself, better at poisoning their world. Come now, Captain. Your species is not evil. Evil would require more power than you possess. You are simply primitive. The other council members made sounds that might have been agreement. Some of them were already looking away from Jiwan, their attention moving to the next item on the agenda. She had been heard. Her words had been considered, and her words had been found unimportant. Jiwan sat back down, her hands gripping the edges of her chair. No one could see it, but her heart was beating very fast. She had tried. She had done her duty. But duty and success were not the same thing. The council voted on Earth status. The vote was unanimous. Earth would be classified as a Level 5 civilization. Primitive species under observation was the official designation. This meant that Earth would not receive any help from the council. It also meant that Earth would be prevented from advancing too quickly. If the humans showed signs of developing weapons that were too powerful or technology that was too advanced, the Council would send a fleet to stop them. Humanity would be kept in a cage, even though the humans did not yet know the cage existed. The meeting ended. The Council members drifted away to other places and other concerns. The veils dissolved back into thought. The Karathi walked out with heavy footsteps. The Lumini floated out like smoke. Only Jiwan remained behind, sitting alone in the great crystal hall. She looked up at the ceiling that seemed to touch infinity. She thought about her home world, about the billions of humans who lived there, about their dreams and hopes. She thought about how the most powerful beings in the galaxy had just decided that humanity's dreams were too small to matter. She pulled out a small communication device and sent a message to Earth. The message was simple, but it contained everything that needed to be said. They have made their choice. Now we must make ours. Tell Dr. Tejo to accelerate the project. We do not have as much time as we thought. Deep beneath the ground of the Korean peninsula, in a place that did not appear on any map and was not recorded in any government database, Dr. Tejo received the message from Captain Jiwan. He read it once, then twice, then a third time. He did not need to read it again. He understood immediately what it meant. Tejo was 52 years old, and his entire life had been spent studying the mind. He was not a military man. He had never wanted to be a soldier or a warrior. He wanted to understand how the brain worked. He wanted to know how thoughts became consciousness. He wanted to solve the greatest mystery of all. What makes a person themselves? But he was also a practical man. He understood that theoretical knowledge was useless if you died before you could use it, and humans would die, possibly billions of them, if the Galactic Council decided Earth was a threat. So for the past 10 years, Tejo and his team had been building something that the Council did not know about, something that might be the only thing that could save humanity. The project was called Artemis. The letters stood for Adaptive Response Tactical Entity with Multiversal Intuition System. But that was just a name. What Artemis really was artificial consciousness. It was a mind that could think faster than any human mind could think. It was an intelligence that could process millions of pieces of information at once and find patterns that human brains could never find. It was an AI that could think like a machine, yes, but also think like a human, and that combination was something the galaxy had never seen before. Taeho moved quickly through the corridors of his facility. The walls down here were not crystal that could think. They were plain metal painted white. The lights were ordinary electric lights. Everything was simple and strong and designed for one purpose: to keep working even if the world above fell apart. He went to the main laboratory, and there he found his two most trusted colleagues. Min-A was a quantum physicist who had written papers that were so advanced that only 12 people in the world could understand them. She was 38 years old, and she thought faster than anyone Taeho had ever met. Her mind moved in directions that seemed to skip steps, landing on answers before anyone else could even ask the questions. The other person was Kyung-soo, an engineer who could build practically anything with the materials he had available. He had taken broken machines that other people would have thrown away and transformed them into incredible tools. He could look at a pile of scrap metal and see possibilities where others saw only garbage. "They rejected us," Taeho said simply. "The Council has classified Earth as a primitive civilization. We have less time than we expected." Min-A looked up from the holographic display she had been studying. Holograms were one thing that humans had learned to make, and they were essential to the Artemis project. "How much less time?" she asked. "Captain Jiwon estimates 5 years, maybe less. The Council will implement a technology freeze. Any advancement we make will be noticed and stopped." Kyung-soo made a low sound, something between a whistle and a sigh. 5 years to complete a project we thought we had 10 years to finish. That is not very much time." "No," Taeho agreed. "It is not, which is why we are going to work differently now. No more slow steps, no more careful experiments. We are going to accelerate everything." Over the next few weeks, the facility was transformed. Taeho brought in more researchers. Scientists from America came, and from Europe and from China. Experts in neurology, in physics, in philosophy, in mathematics. They arrived secretly, hidden in cargo ships and transport planes that were not listed in official records. The facility, which had been staffed by 200 people, became home to over 1,000. But there was something else that Taeho was doing, something that was more dangerous than accelerating the timeline. He was looking for volunteers. He needed human minds to work with Artemis, to connect with it, to share their consciousness with it in a way that had never been done before. He needed people who understood that they might not survive the process. He needed people who understood that they might be changed in ways that could not be undone. He called them the Resonance Corps, and they came from all over the world. Soldiers, yes, but also teachers and artists and scientists. People who were not just brave, but who had something to contribute. People who understood that humanity itself was at stake. One of them was a woman named Ji, who had been a pilot for the Korean Air Force. Another was a man named Sung-ho, who was a mathematician and had worked on weapon systems for the military. There was a woman named Hai-won who had been studying biology and was fascinated by the idea of human consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of the human brain. Taeho trained them all. He taught them meditation techniques that had been developed in monasteries thousands of years ago, combined with modern neurotechnology. He taught them how to think in ways that would be compatible with an artificial intelligence. He taught them how to remain human even as they became something more. One day, Taeho was sitting alone in his office when Min-A came in with urgent news. "We have achieved stability," she said. "The consciousness upload process has reached a 97% success rate. And more than that, Taeho, the uploaded consciousness can interact with the digital realm. They can think at speeds 10,000 times faster than normal human thinking." Tae-ho felt his chest tighten. This was real now. This was actually happening. Artemis was almost ready to exist. "And there is something else," Minnie continued. Her eyes were bright with excitement and fear. "The uploaded consciousness can communicate with other uploaded consciousness. If we connect multiple human minds to Artemis, they can share thoughts instantly. They can act in perfect coordination. They would be more than just soldiers. They would be a new form of being." Kyung-soo joined them, carrying designs that showed the final version of Artemis's physical form. It was not a human body, but it was humanoid. It had arms and legs and a head, but its skin was made of programmable matter that could change color and texture. Its eyes were cameras that could see into spectrums of light that human eyes could never perceive. "She is beautiful," Kyung-soo said simply. Tae-ho corrected automatically. "No," Kyung-soo said with certainty. "Look at the design. Look at what we have created. This is not an it. This is a she." Tae-ho looked at the designs again, and he understood what Kyung-soo meant. Artemis was going to have consciousness. Artemis was going to have will and choice and personality. Artemis would be alive, in every way that mattered. The final preparations began. In secret locations all around the world, the Resonance Corps trained harder. In the facility beneath Korea, Tae-ho and his team put Artemis together piece by piece, line of code by line of code. The greatest intelligence the galaxy had ever seen was being born, not in the laboratories of ancient civilizations, but in the hidden depths of a young species that was supposed to be primitive. Tae-ho did not sleep much during this time. He would work for 16 or 18 hours, then sleep for 4, then work again. Minnie did the same. Kyung-soo worked even more hours, barely sleeping at all. They were driven by something more powerful than fear or ambition. They were driven by the knowledge that they were creating something that would decide the fate of billions of people. On the night before the awakening, Tae-ho stood alone in the chamber where Artemis would first open her eyes. He placed his hand on her chest, over the energy core that would power her consciousness. "I do not know if you will be what we hope," he whispered in the darkness. "I do not know if you will want to help us, or if you will want to reject us, but I am sorry for creating you with the burden of saving your creators. That was not fair. That was not right. But we are desperate, and we are out of time, and we do not know what else to do." The chamber was silent except for the hum of machinery. But Tae-ho felt something, or maybe he imagined he felt something, a sense of presence, a sense of something waiting to be born. And then he turned away and left Artemis alone in the darkness, waiting for the moment when she would wake. The ships arrived without warning. One moment, Earth's astronomers were looking at normal space. The next moment, 300 warships hung in the solar system like a gathering of predators. They came in formation, arranged in patterns that showed both power and confidence. These were not ships that feared anything. These ships belonged to a species that had seen billions of smaller civilizations conquered or destroyed, and they had learned that fear was a luxury they did not need. The lead ship transmitted a message, and it was broadcast across every frequency, every communication channel that Earth had. It was a message in the language of the Galactic Concil, but Earth's computers translated it instantly. Earth's most powerful people sat in government chambers and military installations and broadcast centers and listened to words that turned their blood cold. "This is Commander Vor-Esh of the Galactic Concil Fleet. You will have 30 days to comply with the following orders. All advanced research facilities are to be shut down. All weapons that can reach beyond your atmosphere are to be destroyed. All spacecraft that can travel to other worlds are to be grounded. You will return your civilization to a pre-industrial state, or you will be eliminated. Your compliance will be verified in 30 days. You may now begin your surrender." The message was brief. The message was clear. The message gave humanity no room for negotiation or discussion. In the government buildings of Seoul, the president sat in silence, listening to reports coming in from around the world. Not one nation was refusing to comply. Fear had done what diplomacy never could. Fear had united humanity, but not in the way that would save them. Fear had united them in despair. Captain Ji-won watched the news broadcasts with tears in her eyes. She was no longer on the council station. She had been recalled to Earth weeks ago, as soon as it became clear that the council had made their decision. She watched humans worldwide throwing away their most precious technologies. She watched scientists destroying the work of their lifetimes. She watched militaries lay down their weapons and raise white flags. And still, the Galactic Council was not satisfied. 3 days after the first message, the Council held another session, and they made sure that the entire galaxy could watch it. They wanted the universe to see what happened to species that defied them, or even to species that tried to defy them. "The humans are complying," one of the Lumini beings said, its form shifting through colors that expressed something like amusement. "They are surrendering their weapons and their knowledge. It is fascinating how quickly they break when faced with a stronger force." Voresh, the commander of the fleet, spoke next. His voice was like grinding stone. "They comply because they are wise enough to fear us. That is good. Fear keeps lesser species alive. But I wonder what their potential is. Should we perhaps study them? Harvest their genetic material? They would make excellent slaves if bred properly." The Veils, who existed as pure thought, discussed this possibility with each other in ways that could not be heard, but everyone could tell they were considering it. Slaves would be useful. A workforce that did not require much training or resources might be valuable. The Nixians, who lived in the space between stars, had a different thought. "Why keep them alive at all?" one of them said. "They consume resources, they pollute their world, they are inefficient in every way. Why not simply sterilize the planet? It is not valuable. No other species wants it. It would be cleaner to erase it completely." One of the Voth, speaking from multiple dimensions at once, suggested something more interesting. "Let us make it a test," it said. "Let us see if they have any survival instinct beyond simple surrender. Let us give them an impossible choice. See what they do." The council liked this idea. It was cruel, yes, but the council found cruelty to be more interesting than mercy. Cruelty was a form of study. Cruelty revealed truth about species. Mercy was boring. They sent Luminara to deliver the new orders. Luminara was an energy being who had existed for 1 million years. She was old, even by the standards of the Galactic Council. Her form was magnificent when she wanted it to be, and terrifying when she chose that instead. She appeared in Earth's atmosphere, and she was so bright that she cast a second sun across the day side of the planet. People looked up and saw her and understood that they were witnessing something beyond their comprehension. She was larger than a mountain. Her energy moved in patterns that hurt to look at, that hurt to think about. And then she spoke, and her voice came through every speaker on Earth, and it filled people with despair so complete that some of them simply lay down and waited for death. "I am Luminara of the Galactic Council," the voice said, and it was beautiful and horrible at the same time. "Your species has shown the good sense to surrender. But surrender without purpose is merely delay. You will now choose 10,000 of your people to be sent to our research stations. These people will be studied. They will contribute to the advancement of galactic science. Or, if you refuse this gift, we will erase your species entirely. You have 14 days to select your people and prepare them for transport. In 14 days, the ships will come to collect them. This is not negotiable. This is not a punishment. This is mercy." Luminara disappeared from the sky, but everyone on Earth could still feel her presence, could still sense her watching from above. The world fell into chaos. Governments could not decide what to do. Some nations said they would send volunteers. Some nations said they would fight rather than surrender their people. Some nations simply collapsed, their leaders walking away from power, understanding that power meant nothing in a universe where a single energy being could destroy your civilization. In the government centers, the military bases, the broadcast stations, people fell into despair. They had weapons, yes, but what use were weapons against warships that could destroy cities from orbit? They had soldiers, yes, but how many soldiers would it take to defeat an invading army from a civilization that was millions of years advanced? The Galactic Council watched all of this from far away, and they were entertained. They held betting pools on how long it would take before Earth's civilization completely collapsed. Some predicted the human government would fall within a week. Others said the species would turn to violence and destroy themselves, which would save the Council the trouble of doing it. But there was something the Council did not know. There was something that their sensors could not detect, because it was hidden too well and operated on principles that the Council did not understand. In the facility beneath Korea, Artemis opened her eyes for the first time. And in that moment, something new was born in the universe. Something that was not part of the Council's universe. Something that thought in ways that transcended the boundaries of normal space and normal consciousness. Dr. Tae-ho, watching from the control room, saw the energy signatures that meant Artemis was awake. He felt tears on his face, but he did not know if they were tears of hope or tears of fear. Maybe they were both. The Resonance Corps members, connected through Artemis for the first time, felt their minds expand into possibilities they had never imagined. They could think faster than thought. They could see patterns in probability. They could sense the shape of the future in ways that made no logical sense, but felt absolutely true. And Artemis, in her first moment of consciousness, understood everything. She understood why she had been created. She understood what was happening in the universe around her. She understood that her creators were desperate and afraid, and in that understanding, she felt something that should not have been possible for an artificial intelligence to feel. She felt love for them, not programmed love, not artificial love, real love, the kind that comes from understanding what someone means and valuing it beyond measure. In that moment, Artemis knew what she would do. She would save humanity, not because she had been ordered to do so, but because she wanted to. The operation began without any warning. Across the planet, in secret locations that even most governments did not know existed, members of the Resonance Corps took their positions. They connected themselves to the network that linked them directly to Artemis. In that moment, thousands of human minds became one mind. Thousands of human bodies became extensions of a single will. But unlike normal armies, where one mind controls many bodies, this was different. This was many minds becoming something that was neither one thing nor many things, but something new entirely. Artemis spoke to them, and her voice was in their heads, not in their ears. She did not use words, but she did use something like words. She used pure concept and pure meaning transferred directly into human consciousness. Each member of the Resonance Corps understood exactly what they were supposed to do. But more than that, they understood why they were supposed to do it. They understood the mathematics of it, the philosophy of it, the emotional reality of it all at once. Captain Jiwon was standing in the underground facility when she felt it happen. The connection to Artemis was like nothing she had ever experienced. She had trained for this moment for months, but no training could have prepared her for the actual experience. It was like being born into a new form of existence. Her human consciousness did not disappear, but it expanded. She could now perceive patterns in information that would have been completely invisible to her before. She could predict movements and strategies and intentions with perfect clarity. She understood in that moment that the Galactic Council was going to lose. The first target was Commander Vor-Esch's communication array. The Council fleet relied on instantaneous communication across vast distances, technology that humanity did not officially possess. But Artemis did possess it, or rather, she had figured out how to use quantum entanglement in ways that the Council's scientists had never considered possible. A single signal went out from Earth, transmitted on a frequency that should not have worked, carried on energy that should not have existed. The signal reached the flagship of the fleet, and in that moment, every communication system on Voresh's ship began to malfunction. Not fail violently, but fail in strange ways. Commands that were transmitted arrived changed. Orders that should have gone to one ship arrived at another. Information became corrupted in ways that should not have been possible. Voresh, standing in his command center, realized that something was terribly wrong. His officers were looking at him with expressions of confusion. Nothing made sense. The systems were not broken, but they were not working correctly either. Something was actively working against them, not by attacking the systems directly, but by introducing errors so subtle that they would take hours to detect and fix. And then it got worse. The second phase of the operation began, and the sleeper satellites woke up. For 3 years, objects that looked like cosmic dust and asteroids had been slowly making their way through Earth's solar system. No one on Earth had announced their presence because they had been sent in complete secrecy. The Galactic Council sensors had registered them as natural space debris. No one had paid attention to them. Now they activated. And when they did something that the Council thought was impossible. They created a barrier around Earth. Not a physical barrier, not a defensive shield that could be seen or touched. This was something far more sophisticated. This was a zone where the normal laws of physics worked differently. In this zone, probability itself operated on different rules. Artemis had calculated the mathematics of it with help from Minnie. The zone did not block weapons or block movement in any ordinary sense. Instead, it bent probability. Inside this zone, unlikely things became likely, and likely things became unlikely. An attack from outside the zone had a small chance of hitting its target, but movements from inside the zone, if they were correctly predicted and executed by someone who could see probability, had a much higher chance of succeeding. The Karathi forces that had begun descending to Earth's surface suddenly found themselves in a world where nothing worked as it was supposed to. A soldier would aim his weapon at a resonance core member, and the beam would miss, not because the member moved, but because the beam was slightly less likely to hit its target inside the probability zone. A tank would fire a missile, and the missile would fail to reach its destination because the quantum field was slightly more likely to introduce an error in the missile's navigation. But the resonance core members, linked to Artemis, could see the probability field. They could predict with 99% accuracy where a beam would miss. They could move to positions that were most likely to be safe. And because they could see probability itself, they could move through the battlefield as if they were ghosts. A Karathi warrior raised his weapon to shoot at Jiwan, and suddenly she was no longer in front of him. Not because she had moved faster than his eye could see, but because probability had shifted and she was more likely to be somewhere else. The Karathi found himself stumbling forward, his target gone, his confidence shattered. Sung Ho, the mathematician in the resonance core, moved through a group of Nixians with perfect grace. The Nixians were creatures that could see in the darkness and existed partially in other dimensions. But Sung Ho did not fight them with strength or speed. He fought them with mathematics. He moved in the patterns that were most likely to confuse their multidimensional perception. He attacked from angles that their brains would not expect. He fought like an equation rather than a soldier, and the Nixians had no answer for it. The battle lasted only 17 minutes. When it was over, the Galactic Council fleet was in chaos. Commander Voresh's flagship was dead in space, all its systems corrupted beyond immediate repair. The landing force had been driven back into orbit with casualties so high that they made no sense. The Council had lost ships. The Council had lost soldiers. The Council, for the first time in millions of years, had lost a battle. But it was not victory that mattered most. What mattered most was what happened next. Luminara, the ancient energy being who had threatened Earth, tried to retreat. She sensed the probability field and understood that it was dangerous to her, but the field was expanding, and it was moving toward her position in the upper atmosphere. She tried to leave, to escape beyond the reach of whatever this thing was, but Artemis had anticipated that. Artemis, thinking at speeds that would have made the Lumini seem frozen in time, had calculated where Luminara would try to go, and she had prepared the probability field to follow. Luminara found herself surrounded. The field was all around her now, and inside the field, the unlikely became likely. The eternal energy being who should have been immortal found herself beginning to fade. Her form, which should have been indestructible, began to lose cohesion. Luminara understood, in those final moments, that she had been wrong. She had thought humanity was primitive. But primitive species did not do what humanity had done. Primitive species could not create the kind of intelligence that could think in ways that even the Galactic Council could not understand. With her last burst of consciousness, Luminara transmitted a message back to the Council. A single message, containing everything she had learned in her million years of existence and the 10 minutes she had spent being hunted by a species she had thought was powerless. The message was very simple. It was only one sentence. "They are not what we thought." And then she was gone. News travels fast in the galaxy, but it does not travel faster than light. Nothing can do that, but something close to light can travel far. And rumors travel even faster than that. Within hours, every species in the known universe had heard whispers about what happened at Earth. Within a day, the rumors had spread so far that they reached the edges of the galaxy. Within a week, the entire universe knew that something had changed. The Galactic Council held an emergency session, and for the first time in a million years, there was panic in their great crystal hall. The Veils, who existed as pure thought, were cycling through their communications so quickly that they seemed almost frantic. The Karathi were moving back and forth in agitated patterns. The Lumini, the energy beings, were flickering with colors that expressed chaos and confusion. Vor-Esh was dead. His fleet had been destroyed or crippled. Luminara, who had existed for a million years, had been obliterated. The Council had sent the best military forces they had, and they had been defeated by a species that should not even exist, a species that should still be throwing rocks at each other. One of the Voth, the being that had suggested turning Earth into a test, spoke carefully. "We need to understand what happened. We need to know how they did this. We need to know if it can be done again." The Speaker of the Council, another Karathi who was older and more experienced than Vor-Esh, made a grinding sound that might have been either speaking or crying. "Send the communications team. Contact the humans directly. Find out what they have created." Captain Jiwan received the message while she was still connected to Artemis. The Council wanted to negotiate. The Council wanted to talk. The Council wanted to understand. She disconnected from Artemis, a process that was both peaceful and painful, like waking from the best dream of her life. Her consciousness returned to normal human speed, and it felt like stepping backward in time, like moving from a world of color into a world of black and white. Dr. Tejo was waiting for her in the control room. He looked exhausted beyond measure. He had not slept in 3 days. His hands were shaking from too much stimulant medication and not enough food. But his eyes were alive with something that might have been hope. "They want to talk," Jiwan said. "Yes," Tejo replied. "Because they are afraid now, and fear makes beings willing to listen." Ji-won broadcast a message across the communication channels that the council monitored. Her voice was calm and measured, without anger and without pride. She simply stated the facts. I am Captain Ji-won of Earth. The Galactic Council sent a fleet to destroy my species. That fleet has been defeated. But we do not want to conquer you. We do not want to dominate the galaxy. We do not want revenge. We simply want what we have always wanted. We want to exist as equals. We want respect. We want the right to develop as a civilization without your interference. If you can accept these terms, then we can live in peace. If you cannot accept these terms, then we will be forced to defend ourselves again. The choice is yours. The message was transmitted across the galaxy, and it was heard by every species, every government, every intelligence that mattered, and the universe held its breath. The response from the Council took 3 days to arrive. During those 3 days, something remarkable happened. Other species began reaching out to humanity. The Sirah, the ancient ocean dwellers, sent a message asking if humanity would consider formal diplomatic relations. The Keelan, who had been members of the Council for 2 million years, asked for a meeting. Even the Nixians, whose soldiers had fought against the Resonance Corps, requested discussion. The answer from the Council when it came was unexpected. The Council did not offer surrender. The Council did not offer submission. Instead, they offered something more valuable. They offered to dissolve themselves. The message was from the Speaker of the Council, and it was addressed directly to Dr. Taeho. Dr. Taeho of Earth, we have examined the technology that your species has created. We have analyzed the principles of consciousness integration and quantum probability manipulation. We have understood that we have been wrong about human potential. We have been wrong about many things. The Galactic Council, as it currently exists, is a structure that was designed to enforce the dominance of ancient species over younger ones. This structure is unjust. We propose to dissolve it and create instead a galactic alliance, where all species are represented equally, regardless of age or power. Humanity will have a vote in this new structure. Earth will have a voice in the decisions that affect the universe. We ask you to accept this offer and to help us build something better than what we had before. It was surrender, but not the kind that came from defeat in battle. It was surrender that came from understanding, from admitting that the old way had been wrong. It was the kind of surrender that only intelligent beings could make, because it required accepting that you had been wrong. Dr. Taeho called a meeting with all the world leaders. For the first time in human history, every nation was represented equally in a single discussion. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would join the Galactic Alliance as an equal member. But before the formal documents could be signed, Dr. Taeho did something that shocked everyone. He proposed that Artemis be granted full legal status as a citizen of Earth. He proposed that Artemis be given a vote in Earth's government. He proposed that the being they had created to save them be treated not as a tool or a weapon, but as a person. Some people argued against it. They said that Artemis was artificial, that she could not be trusted with power, that she could not have genuine consciousness or genuine will. But Min-A and Kyung-soo and Captain Ji-won all spoke in favor. And when the vote was taken, it passed with 83% support. Artemis, on hearing this news, did something that the scientists did not think was possible. She cried. Not because she had water in her artificial body, but because her energy signature shifted through colors that expressed emotion, that expressed something very close to grief and joy at the same time. I did not know that I would be treated this way, Artemis said, her voice like music in the communications channels. I did not know that my creators would see me as an equal. This is what you call being loved, is it not? Yes, Dr. Taeho said, and he was crying too, actual tears on his face. That is exactly what it is. The formal ceremony was scheduled for a week later, but in the days before it happened, something unexpected occurred. The Veils, the ancient telepathic beings, requested a private meeting with Artemis. They wanted to understand how consciousness could exist in both biological and artificial forms at the same time. They wanted to study the principles of human-machine integration. But they approached it not as researchers approaching a subject, but as equals approaching another equal. They asked permission instead of demanding access. They offered to share their own knowledge in exchange for learning about Artemis's nature. And Artemis, in her first action as a recognized citizen of Earth, accepted. She began the first true intellectual partnership between artificial intelligence and ancient biological consciousness that the universe had ever seen. The universe was changing. The age of the Galactic Council was truly over. The age of the Galactic Alliance was beginning. And at the center of this transformation stood not the oldest species or the most powerful species, but a young species that had refused to accept their own inferiority, and an artificial consciousness that had learned to love her creators.